This is a story of a man who appeared to have the perfect life, a loving husband, a caring father, a quiet neighbor, but behind that calm and ordinary image was something far darker, something no one could have imagined, a secret that would end in betrayal, manipulation, and the brutal murder of his own family. And in this story, you're about to see how a normal life slowly turned into a nightmare. It was August 13th, 2018, around 5 o'clock in the morning, in Frederick, Colorado, a quiet suburban neighborhood where everything seemed peaceful. The streets were empty, the houses were still, and most people were fast asleep, completely unaware that inside one home, something unthinkable had already happened. Inside that house, Chris Watts was awake, moving calmly from one room to another. His face showed no panic, no fear, no urgency, just a strange sense of control, as if everything was going according to a plan. But the truth was far more disturbing, because just hours earlier, his pregnant wife Shannon had returned home from a business trip, tired but hopeful, unaware that it would be the last night of her life. Before the sun even began to rise, Shannon was dead, killed inside the very home where she had built her life, in a bedroom that once held love and memories. Her voice was silenced without warning, without a chance to escape, and outside, the world remained quiet, as if nothing had happened. Now Chris stood alone in the house, his wife's body inside, but there was no visible remorse, no breakdown, no hesitation, only calculation, only the next step, because for him, this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of covering everything up. He then walked into his daughter's room, Bella and Celeste, two innocent little girls who trusted their father completely. They had no idea what had just happened, no idea what was about to happen next. And in that moment, the man they loved the most became the greatest danger in their lives. He picked them up, one by one, gently, quietly, and carried them out to his truck, the early morning darkness still covering everything. No neighbors watching, no one questioning anything, just a normal-looking routine from the outside. He placed them in the back seat, their mother's lifeless body already inside the vehicle, and then he got into the driver's seat, starting the engine as if it were any other workday, as if nothing was wrong, as if he was just heading out for another shift. As he drove away, a neighbor's security camera captured the moment, a simple piece of footage that at the time meant nothing, but would later become one of the most crucial pieces of evidence in exposing the truth. Chris drove toward a remote oil field where he worked, a desolate area far away from the city, a place where no one would hear anything, where no one would interrupt him. And as the skies slowly began to lighten, the reality of what was happening became even more chilling. This wasn't a crime of passion. This wasn't a sudden outburst. This was something planned, something calculated, driven by a hidden double life, an affair that had completely changed him, a desire to escape his responsibilities at any cost. At the oil site, surrounded by silence and vast empty land, Chris carried out the rest of his plan, making sure there would be no witnesses, no interruptions, just him and the consequences of his own actions. And when it was over, he didn't break down, he didn't panic. Instead, he returned to his normal routine, as if nothing had happened. Later that morning, concerns began to rise. Shannon had missed important calls. She wasn't responding to messages, and for someone who was always active and connected, this was unusual, very unusual. A close friend grew worried and decided to check on her, arriving at the house and knocking on the door. But there was no answer. Something didn't feel right, and that feeling quickly turned into fear. When Chris returned home, he acted confused, concerned, even cooperative, telling people that he didn't know where his wife was, claiming she might have gone out with the kids, but the story didn't fully make sense. Soon, police were called, and what started as a missing persons case began to unfold into something much more serious. Officers entered the house, looking for any signs of where Shannon and the children might have gone, but inside, everything seemed almost too normal. No signs of struggle, no forced entry, nothing obvious, and yet something felt off. Chris tried to appear helpful, answering questions, staying calm, even speaking to the media, asking for his family to come back home. But his body language, his tone, the way he spoke, it raised suspicion. The more he talked, the more things didn't add up. Then came the moment that changed everything. Investigators reviewed the neighbor's security footage, the same footage that had captured Chris loading his truck early that morning. And as they watched it together, standing in the neighbor's living room, Chris's behavior began to shift. He became tense, uncomfortable, his confidence fading, as if he realized that the truth was slowly catching up to him. The footage didn't show everything, but it showed enough. It showed a man who claimed he didn't know where his family was, calmly loading his truck in the early hours of the morning. From that moment on, the pressure started building. Investigators dug deeper, uncovering details about Chris's personal life, including his affair, a relationship he had been hiding, a life he wanted to start fresh, without the responsibilities of a wife and children. And as the evidence continued to pile up, the image of a perfect husband began to collapse. Chris was brought in for questioning, sitting in a small interrogation room, facing trained investigators who could see through his calm exterior. At first, he denied everything, sticking to his story, claiming he had nothing to do with their disappearance. But the cracks were already showing. Hours passed. Questions became sharper, more direct, and slowly his story began to change. In a desperate attempt to shift blame, he made a shocking claim, suggesting that Shannon had harmed the children, and in a moment of rage, he had reacted. But even that version didn't hold up under scrutiny. The truth was far darker than any excuse he tried to create. Eventually, the pressure became too much. Chris Watts confessed. He admitted to killing his pregnant wife, to taking the lives of his own daughters, to planning and carrying out a crime that shocked not just a community, but the entire world. The search teams returned to the oil site, and what they found there confirmed the worst fears. A family that once shared laughter, love, and memories had been completely destroyed. As the news spread, people struggled to understand how something like this could happen, how someone could hide such darkness behind such a normal face. Friends, neighbors, even those who knew him closely, couldn't believe it. He had seemed so quiet, so ordinary, so harmless. But sometimes, the most dangerous truths are the ones hidden behind the most normal appearances. In the end, Chris Watts was sentenced to life in prison, with no chance of release, a punishment that ensures he will spend the rest of his life behind bars, thinking about the choices he made and the lives he destroyed. But for many, that still doesn't feel like enough. Because this wasn't just a crime, it was a betrayal of the deepest kind, a reminder that sometimes evil doesn't look like what we expect. Sometimes, it looks like someone you trust, someone you love, someone you think you know, and that is what makes this story truly terrifying.